In today's video, we're going to make resin copies of this base. If you'll recall, some weeks ago, I made this rubber mold. It came out beautiful. If you haven't seen that video, go watch it. And today we're going to pour resin in it. And the trick to pouring resin into this mold is we want to orient the part in space correctly so that the resin will flow into the mold, rise out, and really will only need one little vent right at the very top to pour this entire mold. And in fact, you can see it on the mold. You can see the one little vent right there. There's the spout, there's the vent. So this mold has to orient in space about like this, something like that, about like that angle, just about like that, so that I can pour the resin into the mold, it can flow down and rise up and just come out that one vent hole. I can hear a lot of you saying to me, why don't you inject the resin down into the mold cavity? Wouldn't that work better to like push it down in there? Well, the answer is no, I'm not going to use injection, and here's why. Injecting resin into a mold and pouring resin into a mold are exactly the same thing. There's no difference. You can make an argument that, well, when you pour a mold, you have to have a little spout. Whereas if you inject it, you can just have an entrance hole and then you stick the syringe or the pump or whatever mechanism you're using and just, push the stuff in there. So why don't I like doing that? The reason I don't do it is because injection doesn't do anything different. The moment the resin leaves the syringe or the pump or whatever you've got, the moment it leaves there, it's the same exact thing as pouring it out of a cup. Now you're saying, no, it isn't. When you inject, you're pushing the resin into places. If you think there's a difference, you're wrong. There isn't any difference because no amount of human pressure can compress the air anywhere close to enough to push the air or make it, to crush it, get it out of the way. It just doesn't work. And the other thing that drives me crazy when I watch YouTube videos, I see these people pumping resin into molds and they're held together with rubber bands. And they're trying to force into a mold where the rubber bands are straining against and then they open them up and they get all kinds of hideous flashing and nonsense and they get bubbles. It doesn't work. People get confused because they hear of injection molding where they use these machines that put resin under hundreds of thousands of pounds per square inch of force and cram them into steel molds. And even in those molds, they gate them and vent them. Because air is fantastically compressible, but it's also fantastically powerful. And it's much easier to work with the design of the cavity, work with gravity, work with the natural weight of the resin being underneath the air, and just gently and easily flow the air out of the mold. That's the way this works. Resin casting is about moving the air out of the way. That's the whole trick to it. So, okay, I've ranted enough. Let's get on to doing something here. One of the things I like to do is I like to just cut the kind of corners off of molds because there is this kind of edge. I don't know how easy it is to see that, but there is this edge, and that edge kind of crushes over when I put it in a case. And I'm going to put this mold in a case. And of course, the other reason to put this mold in a case, aside from holding it perfectly in place, is I want to make sure that I get a nice, even closing pressure all around, even closing, so that we don't have any mold distortion. Because this box is so precise and so clean and so straight and square that even the slightest mold distortions, even the slightest warping and distortion of the mold is going to make a funky dunky warpy box. We don't want that. We want a clean casting. So we'll see if we can do it. So I just use a scissors and come along and just trim off this little edge, raised edge. It's not a big deal. It's kind of cosmetic, but I just feel like it's just one more step into getting a mold that is not distorted or deformed in any way so that you get an accurate casting. Let's build a cradle. Dug around in the old scrap pile to find this piece of plywood. It's kind of a nice big piece of plywood to waste on a mold case. I try to use scrap as much as I can, but the thing about this mold is I need this to be flat. I don't want to use a warpy, funky piece of wood because then it'll want to pull the rubber out of shape. So we don't want that. We do want to set this thing on here because we want it to sit upright, which means that we're going to want it at roughly pretty close to a 45-degree angle, which I eyeballed and came pretty close. here's the thing, I had to think ahead on this project. I'm going to drop this down into the tank, and it's got to fit. And I have about 7.5 clear inches, but that's 7.5 and with an oval on each end, which means I really have less than 7.5 inches. So I'm thinking I'm safe at 6.5. So what I did was I designed this mold so I could come in here and I could cut these corners off. Rather than fabricate a box and do all that other stuff, it's just easier to come in here and just lop this rubber off. Very neat and simple. So I'm going to make a box that I think is going to be, 6.5 is plenty wide. I'd only have to lop a little bit off. So 6.5. So let's mark this out to 6.5. We know that. But then this way, looking at this going this way, how long do I need it to be? I'm going to say 7.5. So we know we're going to make a box that's 6.5 by 7.5. And then we're also going to have to, we'll use all this extra wood up here to cut all of the little holders down here. We're going to need a top piece, and we're going to need the stand-up piece that holds it standing up, vertical. So let's go off to the table saw and cut up all the pieces that we need. Okay, let's cut this thing to 6.5 inches. Check it for square. Oh yeah, square enough. 7.5. Okay, this is going to sit on here like that. So we're going to need some little squares. That might be just about the right size. Thinking out loud here, thinking on the fly. Let's cut this to 6.5. Okay. Then we're going to want to lop this right down the middle, 45. That's not my favorite way to do this, but it would work. Not in love with this. Don't know that I want to make a living doing this, but let's give it a try. Definitely don't know if I want to make a living doing that. Let's see about this. Yeah, it could even be shorter, but I could trim that off. That's easily done, so let's trim it. I'm just on the fly here, kids. All right, let's mark this. And let's trim that off. Okay, now we'll look at it again. Perfect fit. Very nice. Work out just fine. I finished cutting out all the pieces on the table saw, including those little mitered strips you see here clamped up, and those will hold the rubber mold in place. And the glue dried so we can take the clamps off, and I've marked up some more cuts that I'm going to make over on the bandsaw, and this is going to fit like this, and the corners are going to get trimmed, and we'll be doing all of that. So the next thing to do is to head over to the bandsaw and cut these parts off and glue this part on. Get these pieces nicked off. These little tabbies I'm just going to clean out with the jigsaw. Makes it easier than hogging them out with the bandsaw. So I'll go over there and do that, and we'll be done. Back from the bandsaw, I finished cutting out all the base parts. I just made some nice notches, as you can see, all the way around. And those are the cleats for the rubber band. Looking good. And the other thing I did, so let's just see how it goes together. this sits in there like that. I have yet to trim these corners. We're going to do that in a second, but I did do this. On this part, this is the top part, and as you can see, I rounded over the edges. See how rounded over those things are. But I rounded over the edges, and the point to that, of course, is rubber bands. So how this is going to work is, let me grab out my rubber bandage. Where'd they go? Here we go. One's here. Here we go. Here's our rubber bands. Okay, so this is how this is going to go together. Basically, it's going to be held together by the rubber bands. And since I didn't have a rubber band that was the right size, I needed a longer one. So I just looped two together, tied two together. Simple enough. And I'll just pull this over here, and that over there, like that, and adjust the bands, kind of adjust the band pressure. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. Put those onto those cleats, come around, lock them over here. And sometimes they don't want to hold, so you got to do them again. There we go. Okay. Now, and then you just kind of want to even out your tension all around as best you can. Kind of even things out, even the pull out. Check it. And that is how it's going to hold together. Really nice. And then, of course, this is going to epoxy onto the back, and it's going to stand upright like that. Just like that. Pretty sweet, if I do say so myself. It's going to work like a champ, and I'll be able to go blub, 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 pour the resin right on in there, and then sink the whole thing in the tanks. Now, so what's left to do? Got to glue this base on with some 5-minute epox. And I'm going to do one more thing, and that is I want to trim off these rubber corners. In fact, let's trim those rubber corners off, or at least start one, right now. So I know where I need to trim it. I need to trim it right here. So that's how much I know I need to trim. So I'll just make a mark across there. And let's just get that thing cut off. The key to cutting rubber is to stretch it. If you stretch it, it's easier to cut. If you don't stretch it, it's hard to cut. This cut does not in any way have to be precise. All I'm really trying to do here, use a sawing motion, is just like that. It doesn't have to be any prettier and any fancier than that. Same thing on the other side. We're just trimming the corner so I get tank clearance. That's really what this is all about. It's just tank clearance. So that's fine. And now I'll do the same thing on this bottom mold. They don't have to align. They don't have to be anything like that. It's just a little bit of trim. This makes it a little easier for me to pop this mold into the tank if I don't have to fuss with aiming it or kind of shifting it side to side to get it into the tank. It'll just, with this excess rubber removed, it'll just drop perfectly. And as you can see, I planned to cut those off. That's why I didn't put a register mark in there, because I knew that I was going to cut these corners off. Okay, now we should have a completed mold ready to put together. Let us see. Put this together. Like that. Like this. I like to make my rubber tension even. I like to space my bands out. And to pull them, I feel the bands to make sure that they all feel the same degree of tight. This is why it came in really handy that I sanded all around the mold, all around these wooden edges, so I didn't run the risk of having the wood cut my bands. This on here like this. They're a little tricky to get on, I guarantee. Here we go. The first one's hard, the second one's easy. All right. And there it is. There it is. Ready to go. See, I chop these off. Don't have to be pretty. They just have to clear the tank. And we are ready to go. I think that's pretty even mold pressure. So let's glue this on. That's the last little step. And I will do that like that. So let me get this last part glued on, and then we'll pour some resin and drop it in the tank. This is the fun part. This is the part we all wait for. Now the question is, how much resin am I going to need? Well, the only way to figure it out is to look at it and go, oh, I don't know what, maybe 80 grams, I'm guessing. Let's see. Set it on the scale. The scale was tared, by the way. I already tared it. It was all set to 0. Let's go 50, 60, 70, 80. I'm a little over. 77, 78, 79 grams. I guess pretty good, huh? No, I didn't. I weighed it ahead of time. I already knew what it weighed. 80 grams, we're going to call it. But I don't like to split those many hairs. So I'm going to do a 100-gram batch. And if I have to waste a little resin, I've got my little sprue funnel cups standing by to take up the excess if there is excess, and I hope I won't be short, because that will be a bummer, but anyway, we'll see. Okay, so let's waste some resin. Here's a little trick I might not have showed you yet. In my phobia of atmospheric moisture, I like to cover my cups, and the easiest way to cover a cup is to put a bigger cup on top of it. Pretty simple, and it works really well, so do that. So this is the B side. Keep that covered. A side, what do we say, 100-gram batch? Put on a cup, but we know what we have to do first. We've got to tare the scale. It's weighing the weight of the cup right now. It's a couple of grams, but still, we got to do it. Got to tare the scale. And I have found, strangely, it's easier to hit the scale with a stick than it is to move the weight with my finger. It's more accurate whacking it with a stick. Okay, we are tared. 50 grams. Let's dump to 40. We just dump the resin into 40. Quick. 40. Okay, so we're pretty close. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, we're real close. Okay, so we're almost there. Almost to 50. Okay, 50. That's 50 grams. Let's go to 80. Cover up my A. I colored the B side orange so y'all can see the casting when it comes out. It'll be a nice pale orange color. 90. Okay, 100 grams. Coming up, come on. And right there is perfect. Beautiful. Okay, 100 grams. Let's mix. Now we don't need a scale. You can move it out of the way. Almost knocked this cup over. That would have been a bloody mess. Don't want that. I like to use 2 sticks. Doubles my stirring power. Get it good and mixed, but we don't want to take too long. This stuff goes off pretty quick. Pretty quick. And with 2 sticks, it mixes up fast. Okay, I can start feeling it getting warm. Getting hot. Okay, put my sticks away. Here we go. Will this work? We don't know. Holy moly, there it is. There it is. There it is. If I can, I'm going to take you along for the ride. Let's get you out of your holder, and put you over here. And hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing, more or less. Let's get this thing laid into the tank. Let's set this thing in the tank. I'm definitely spilling some res a little bit. Oops. Yeah, I got some spillage here. Okay. I kind of overfilled it. Okay, let's see. Let's see what we can do. Okay, back in. Set it in. Nice. It's set in pretty good. Okay, we'll try that. See what happens. In goes the lid, and in goes the air. That air just picks that lid up just like that. All right. Whoo! That should kick. And then we're in business. Yep, there goes the compressor in the corner. All right, in the tank, we'll see what happens. All right, it's time to pull out the resin. So let me get you down from your perch up here, and so you can come along with me. And we're going to close the inlet valve, and we're going to open the outlet valve. As the air is venting out of that muffler right there. Can't see it, but it's venting. It's nice and cool. I put my face over it. It's like, cool air in the summertime. Okay, let's see. There it goes. Boy, I tell you, the minute that air pressure leaves that tank, that thing falls like almighty. All right, let's see what we got. I'm having a little bit of suspicions I did get some pretty good spillage, huh? Oh well. But I'm also having a little bit of suspicions that I may have to change my positioning strategy on this. Notice that on the first pour that we may not have filled the corner. Now I knew that I was good that I was ready to come out of the tank because, of course, like I always do, check the witness cup. Perfect. Whatever is going on inside the cup is going on inside your mold. So that's handy to know. And let's see if I'm going to destroy these rubber bands by having resin on them. I hope not. Usually the resin won't really stick to the rubber bands, but sometimes it'll stick hard enough to break them. If they do, I'll have to rejig my rubber bands. Nope, I saved them. All right, we'll deal with the mold top later. I'll clean that up for the next pour. But now all I care about is what's going on in here. I don't know what's going on in here, boys and girls. I'm nervous now. I'm always nervous. Oh, did it fill? Did it fill? Did it fill? Did it fill? What are we looking like? What do we got? Can we get this out of there? Come on. Okay, I see a problemy right off the bat. Let's get a razor blade in there. Do a little bit of cutting. And what I'm doing is I'm cutting off one of the sprues. That should come out of there though. That's split, that mold. Oh, I see why. Yeah, because it bridged it. Yeah, no, I've got to cut it. Okay. I've got to cut it. I'm cutting the sprue, one of the two sprues. It's a flaw in my two sprue design. It's a slight flaw in my two sprue design, but it's not the end of the world at all. Let's cut this thing. There it goes. Okay, now that should be able to release. How come I didn't cut that bridge thoroughly? I just didn't cut the bridge enough in the middle. No problem. Okay, let's look and see what we have, boys and girls. Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. That is absolutely flawless. Not a flaw in sight. Ooh, that's nice. It's nice and flat. It's nice and square. That is so pretty. Now, what I was a little nervous about was whether or not I would have enough resin in the funnel. Let me see if I can get you to see what I'm talking about here, so you kind of understand my fears and dreams and hopes and everything else. What was crucial in the design is that when I filled the funnels, the level of the funnel had to be above the level of this point where it's showing. I don't know, are you guys seeing this? The level of the funnel had to be above this point, or this little bit might not have filled. But in fact, it filled perfectamundo. So of course, there's going to be some cleanup, but this is 100% clean casting, 100%. Not a bubble in it, not a flaw in it, straight clean edges, and the only cleanup is where you have to get the resin into the mold. There's no way around it. You got to clean that up. But that's it. Wow. That is a raging success, and I'm really, really pleased with this. Now let me go on over to the bandsaw. Okay, I'm back. So what I did was I just nicked off the sprues in the vent with the bandsaw. You don't need a bandsaw. You can use an X-Acto blade. Bandsaw is quicker. But that, you know, that's all tools are. Tools just make stuff quicker. You can do everything with hand tools. You don't have to have power tools. It just makes it quicker. And in a commercial shop, quick is money. So I'm just going to trim these down nice and flat. I like to trim my sprues and my vents and everything right after I do the casting. And the reason for that is this casting is perfectly set. It's perfectly hard. But the resin right now is softer than it's going to be in 24 hours. It's cutting almost like, it's harder than leather, but it's not rock hard. And that makes it really easy to clean up. So I'm a big fan of cleaning castings immediately, as soon as they come out of the mold, because that makes for easy cleanup. Man, oh man, I am super pleased. Winner. Okay, what's amazing to me, usually in two-piece molds, one of the big flaws in a two-piece mold is the flash you get around the edge. Check out my magnificent, look at that, there is no flash at all. I mean, this edge is just the lightest little scrape is going to finish that edge perfectly. Boy, that just could not have worked out better. Hey, if you like this video, watch this video next and keep your projects and your comments and your questions coming. You know I love hearing from you, and I will see you next week. Off.